Good evening, everybody. We are live. It is Wednesday. Hi, I'm glad you're joining me this evening to chat about anxiety, friend or foe. I have 3 questions for you. Are you someone who is living with anxiety? Or is someone you love living with anxiety? And is anxiety their friend or foe? This evening we're talking about anxiety. We're chatting about how you live with anxiety, either as an imaginary friend who participates in your life in a small way, or as an enemy that dominates and ruins every decision and every occasion. So I want you to think about that for a second while I introduce myself. My name is Phobia. I'm an education consultant here in Port Elizabeth, and my aim and my passion is to empower parents to be able to make correct decisions for their children so that they can absolutely thrive at school. So as we look at the different phases of anxiety, I'm going to dwell on what the symptoms are, how you can look and find those symptoms in your child, and then when to know if it's something that you need to seek professional help for. I think that's the main thing that parents ask, is how do I know if this is just a normal worry or if it's something that I need to take a little bit more seriously. So this is what we're going to chat about tonight. We're talking about where and when to go and seek professional help. So please put your questions and your comments into the chat. I have had a few questions coming in beforehand, which I'm going to bring into the discussion. So yeah, like I said, how do you know whether anxiety is something that you need to be concerned about, and what are the behaviors that you're seeing? So just to give you a little bit of background information, about 8 to 11% of the population suffer from anxiety. And in my opinion, I think since COVID, that is a lot more. And it is 50% more prominent in girls than it is in boys. 1 in 5 people will be suffering with anxiety. And as many as 80% will not get treatment, or will go undetected or undiagnosed, and they won't get treatment for it. Anxiety runs in families, and we look at anxiety on a spectrum. It can either be something that is quite slight or something that is a lot more serious, and as I said, it can really dominate and take over one's decision making. So how do you know whether this is something that is of concern? The types of anxiety. I'm going to quickly chat through the types of anxiety, but this isn't why I'm here this evening. But I'm going to show you what kind of things you might see. So this little cartoon strip here actually made me laugh, because you know, when kids start school, they have the separation anxiety where they don't want to get out of the car, they don't want to go into school for the first couple of days. But then once they go and once they are involved in school, that anxiety goes away. And then it comes to college, and they have to go to college, or they've got to go to school out of town. And now who has the separation anxiety? And yeah, it could also be where the child doesn't want to go to sleepovers, doesn't want to go to parties without mommy or daddy going there with them. Obviously, they need to outgrow that. That doesn't stay with them throughout their school life. But if it does, hello Natasha, lovely to see you. If it does, then there again, there needs to be something that we do. We have a social phobia. A social phobia or a social anxiety disorder is when it's not just when they are painfully shy. They are actually afraid of being embarrassed. They don't like being teased. They avoid social situations, going anywhere where there's going to be people that they don't know, or where there's going to be a lot of people is quite a challenge for them, that they would rather not go. They prefer to spend time with themselves, or only with their families, or with just a few people. Generalized anxiety disorder, these are the little worriers that worry about everything all the time. There isn't something specific that they're worried about. They are just generally worried about many things. It's a general anxiety disorder. The specific phobias are things like being scared of the dark, being scared of water, being scared of a dog, being scared of snakes, frogs, scared of heights, anything like that. And then the panic disorder, which we don't really see in little ones, but we see it more coming in with our adolescents, is being afraid of going into shopping centers where they're wide open spaces. They're afraid of actually leaving home. They prefer not to have to go outside of the home situation. Hello, Chantal. Lovely to see you online. Keep the comments coming through, guys. This is lovely. So those are the specific types of anxiety disorders that we might see. Now, moms and dads and whoever's watching, teachers, I want you to have a look at this iceberg picture. You might see certain behaviors in the children that are on the surface. So you might see them lashing out. You might see the defiance. And I want you to think very carefully about boys versus girls. So girls tend to internalize their anxiety. Those are the anxieties that the children, they withdraw, they are quiet, they tend to want to bottle things up, they might spend a lot of time in their room, they are the quiet, it's inside, the anxiety is inside, they don't really show it too much, they're good at hiding their anxiety. Every now and again there'll be a meltdown, there'll be a flood of tears, but generally they control their anxiety rather well inside. With boys, on the other hand, you might see more aggressive behavior. They're irritable, the defiance, the anger. We say that the boys tend to externalize their anxiety rather than the girls. What you might see at school, again, is very different to what you might see at home. So if school is the trigger for the anxiety, then those behaviors would be seen at school. Whereas when they come home and the mom will say, well, I don't see those behaviors at home, it's because the home is the safe space. That's not where they are feeling anxious. Hi, Zukiswa. Please, if you have a question, pop it in the comments so we can address those issues. Other things that we might see, and again, this is generally things that teachers have reported or parents have reported seeing their children doing, and it's severe skin picking, where they are actually pulling at their nails or pulling at their skin, the skin on the side of their nails, and making it bleed. They really cannot stop themselves from doing that. Severe nail biting, where they literally bite the nail right to the cuticle, so it's quite bad. Where they pull their hair, they can pull their hair out, they can pull their eyebrows out or their lashes out, and scratching themselves or self-harming. Those are also signs that there might be issues going on that we need to address. Parents, one thing you need to know is that your kids are living in the same stress of the world that we are living in. I'm going to say that again. Parents, you need to know that your children are living in the same stress of your world, and they react to it in a similar way. So we have grown up, we're adults, we can deal with stress a lot better. But our children are living in that same world. They're living within that same stress. They don't have the skills, they don't have the maturity that we have to deal with stress. And this is where, I suppose, as parents and as adults, we need to come in. So think about it. How do you deal with stress? And again, remember I said girls and boys deal with stress very differently. How do men deal with stress versus how do women deal with stress? So your children are going to mimic and watch how you deal with stress. And more often than not, they're going to behave in the same or similar way. We said that stress or anxiety does run in families. So if there is an anxiety in the family, chances are that the child will also be having some anxiety. The other things that you might see along with anxiety, and I'm forgetting to switch my slides. Other things that you might see: ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, the autism spectrum disorders, depression, bipolar disorder. Those are some of the things that can occur with anxiety. Anxiety very, very seldom occurs just on its own. It's generally tied in with some other things as well. So as parents and as teachers, we need to be looking out for these other things. Sometimes the children might be diagnosed with ADHD and they go onto medication for ADHD, but this exacerbates the anxiety which is underlying. Or they might be on medication for depression or anxiety. They might go onto anxiety medication, which makes the depression worse because the depression is also there. So these are also some of the things that we need to be dealing with. And like I said, you need to know, as parents, you need to know when is it necessary to consult a private practitioner and when is it okay to try and manage it on your own. Chantal, such a good point to look at in the context that we all experiencing the same stresses. Well, that's exactly the same. We are living in the same environment. We're all dealing with COVID. We're all dealing with issues that we didn't sign up for, you know. And I think our children are doing as best they can to navigate with school and with trying to deal with not seeing their friends and having to deal with online learning and all these kinds of things. So I guess it's just to be aware of that side of things. So how do you know when to seek professional help? And I think this is the number one question. How do you know when it's time to seek professional help? When do you know that it's no longer just a normal worry? When is it something that now I actually need to go and get help for? So I think we normally start, and I'm going to move on to this slide. You say that anxiety can be treated with medication, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and self-treatment. So we generally start with the self-treatment side of things. As parents, we say, right, we're going to try and deal with that ourselves within the family. We're going to look for supplements, things that can help with stress. So we go to Clicks or Dischem, and we go and we look at that shelf that's just full of supplements and aromatherapies and all kinds of things, and we try and navigate through that, which can be extremely overwhelming. Even if you just go and look for some vitamin C supplements, you actually don't know whether you're coming or going because you have a choice of about 100 and you don't know which one to get. But we normally start with the natural route or the herbal supplements. And again, how do you know whether this is the right option? Because those can also have side effects. Those can also have side effects that might exacerbate the symptoms or might affect other things like appetite or sleep patterns, for example. But we've all done it. We've all tried to self-medicate first, and then we see how things go. Well, one thing I would say is, mums, you need to find a pattern. So you need to try and identify the trigger. What is causing the anxiety? What is your gut telling you? Is it something to do with school? Is it something to do with going somewhere? Is it something to do with their how they are managing their schoolwork, their organizational skills, their self-management? Is it a teacher? Is it a certain activity that they are doing? Is it a gala coming up? Is it a sports day coming up? Is it being around a lot of people? What is the trigger? What is the one thing that is causing your child to be anxious? If you can know what it is, and if you know that the trigger, if you know what it is, and you understand the pattern. For example, if it is something to do with school, and it's a particular day, let's say it's phys ed, because the child doesn't enjoy phys ed. So always on phys ed days, which is normally a Wednesday or a Friday, they've got an issue with either a tummy ache or a headache, or they don't want to go to school, or they are irritable because they don't want to have to do phys ed. So there again, you would know that that is the trigger, that is the issue. And then once you know what that is, then it's about trying to work around that and saying, okay, how do we work around that? Let's work with the coach, or let's go to the school, let's chat to the teachers, let's try and see what we can do. So look at the physical symptoms. Oh, let's just go to a question quickly. My son is on Concerta, and I'm convinced his anxiety is worse on them, but if I take him, he loses concentration at school, so how do we help him? So my take on Concerta, and again, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I know Concerta is a stimulant. So generally, children with anxiety are not prescribed a stimulant because it does push their anxiety up. So doctors would generally try and look at a medication that is not a supplement, a stimulant, and rather go that route, because there are different types of concentration medication. So if you're finding the anxiety is worse, I would definitely go back to the doctor and ask him if there are other options for the medication. Don't use a stimulant, use one of the other ones. Tics, face, nose twitch, which I feel is linked to anxiety. However, how do I help her to stop the nose twitching? You can't tell them to stop. If you bring them aware, if you make them aware of the twitch or the tic, it just makes it worse. So again, I would consult your doctor or a psychiatrist, because again, certain things could be, if she goes onto medication for the anxiety, it could make the tic or the twitch worse. So it's always important to just consult your pharmacist or a psychiatrist to try and see what to do about that. If you're finding that the medication or the treatment is exacerbating other symptoms, that is where you need to go back to your doctor and have another look. People are inclined to brush under the carpet. Sorry, I never saw that one. I recognize it in friends and even strangers and children. Yeah. Gail, you know what? I see that people are inclined to... anxiety is something that I think we all live with. Anxiety is something that what do you call it? It's something that we are given so that we can avoid being eaten by a wild animal, for example. So your flight or fright comes into play there. So that if you are faced with a situation that you have to now run away or climb a tree or whatever, all of a sudden you'll be flooded with those that adrenaline and those hormones so that you are able to escape. Now, that's in a normal situation where the anxiety is warranted. Let's say now, for example, you are about to write a very important exam, or you have to speak in front of 100 people. Your adrenaline is going to start pumping. You're going to feel those symptoms. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious. Those are warranted because of that situation that you're in. Once you've done that talk or once you've written that exam, your anxiety should go away because now it's finished. But children with anxiety, especially with a general anxiety, will have those feelings all the time, or most of the time, because their body doesn't know how to understand that this is an anxiety-provoking situation, so it's normal, or this isn't an anxiety-provoking situation, but I'm anxious, so I'm going to feel anxious anyway. And that cortisol, which I wasn't going to talk about because it doesn't really warrant a discussion in this particular presentation, but cortisol is what is flooded in, it gets released into our bodies when we are stressed and when we are anxious, and it can be quite dangerous if you live with a high level of cortisol all the time. So in order to get rid of the cortisol, they say the best way to get rid of the cortisol is to exercise, is to go for a long run or go and play a game of soccer or go and rough and tumble outside. Just go and use up that cortisol so that so you don't have the symptoms that go along with high levels of cortisol. And those high levels of cortisol could be things like a dry mouth, your heart palpitates, sweaty palms, you might get a headache, you might feel nausea, whatever. That is what the cortisol does. So it's about trying to keep those levels stable. So we spoke about the physical symptoms. I've just gone through them again. The other thing is if you notice in your child a dramatic change in behavior, so they are acting completely out of sorts or out of character, you're noticing things that they never normally did, that would be a warning sign. The third thing is that their schoolwork will be affected. So you're noticing that there's a decline in their progress or their attitude towards school, and you're noticing this is quite dramatic. So there's a big decline in marks or attitude or anything that you have noticed that is not usual or unusual. And the fourth thing is if friends, close friends and family members have also noticed a change in your child, and they might bring that to your attention, and they might say something like, I've noticed that so-and-so is not as happy as they would normally be, or I've noticed he's more withdrawn, or he seems to be a little bit more sad than normal. So I would listen to what friends and family who know your children well, what they are saying, because that could be, again, another reason to go and seek professional help. Because if people are noticing a change in your child, you with your child every day, so you might notice it. But when other people are visiting or you visiting other people and they notice a change in your child and they mention it to you, I think that would be another reason to be concerned. Okay, so now we're moving on to the treatment. So what are your options? We said medication, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or self-treatment. So if you've done the self-treatment and you found that that isn't working or that hasn't achieved the results that you would like to see, then I think your next step would be to go and speak to your family practitioner, your GP or your pediatrician. I wouldn't go straight to the psychologist. I wouldn't go straight to the psychiatrist. I would start with your GP, the person who knows your family and knows your child best, and go and speak about your concerns there. When you've had that discussion with the doctor, he might suggest, let's try a trial on a medication. And you try that, but guys, you can't just do the medication route and expect everything else to fall into place. You have to do the medication with some psychotherapy or play therapy if it's a young child. You cannot just do the medication. All the medication does is put a plaster on a wound instead of trying to treat why the wound is there in the first place. So the gold standard is to do the medication with the cognitive behavioral therapy. And the reason why I say that is because often the cognitive behavioral therapy will mean that the child might need to go through some scary situations in order to deal with those. So in other words, you try and do the whole desensitizing, which is put yourself in a situation that is anxiety provoking, and the psychologist or the psychiatrist will try and talk you around that. How are you feeling? Why are you feeling like that? Identify those feelings, accept those feelings, be aware of those feelings, and it's okay. And then we'll repeat that cycle a few times. So the whole desensitizing could be very traumatic if there isn't medication involved. So the child might not even want to go there and do the therapy, do the work, if they're anxious about the thought of having to be in that situation that might be so scary. So the medication allows the child or the person to go through that desensitizing so that they can come out of it and be better for it. So I hope that makes sense. The fact that medication is part of the treatment plan. It's not the treatment. Yes, so as I'm coming to the end now, my final little bit is the good, the bad, and the ugly. We spoke about the medication having to be used with the therapy. Is there another question that I missed before I go to the last bit? And then I'm going to end off with a gold nuggets of information here. Lisa, some types of anxiety is normal and actually necessary. It's good to be out of our comfort zone at times and for kids to learn how to deal with difficult situations. And yeah, absolutely, 100%. We can't lawnmower everything smooth. Our kids do need to grow, and they do need to. There are things that are scary, but I think we need to just support them through it and talk them through it, because yeah, as you say, we can't avoid anxiety, we can't avoid stressful situations. That's part of life. So it's about how we deal with them. There's another one. People are quick to medicate. What are natural ways for dealing with stress or anxiety? Yeah, so as I said, I think there are definitely some supplements that you can look at. Other things would be sport. Exercise is great. Mindfulness, again, there's some beautiful mindfulness exercises that can be done. Yoga for kids is amazing. I can send you some beautiful yoga. Again, it's really just becoming quiet, identifying those feelings, knowing why they're there, accepting them, and moving on. You know, the feelings that our body, those are signals. Our body sends us those signals for a reason, and we need to be thankful that our body is reacting in that way and providing us with the necessary feelings that we are having. It's what we do with those feelings that can sometimes get us into trouble. So the feelings generally cause a behavior, and sometimes the behavior is what isn't always acceptable or appropriate, depending on again how well we deal with those feelings. So yeah, thank you for that question. So the final little bit of information before we close, and if there are any questions, please keep them coming. That anxiety, the plus side is that it is the most treatable of the mental illnesses. So it definitely, most times, almost 90% of the time, when the person is treated with like I said, a combination of medication and the talk therapy or the cognitive behavioral therapy, the anxiety is almost gone, and the child or the person can deal with it a lot better with the skills that they are taught. But if it's not treated, it really can become quite debilitating. It can certainly encroach on your life in such a way that you become depressed, you become embarrassed, you become ashamed. Sometimes we self-medicate, we turn to alcohol or drugs, and especially our teenagers. Our teenagers are the most vulnerable group as far as I'm concerned today, in this day and age, because they are so they're sort of in a confused stage. They don't know if they're allowed to cry. They don't know if they're allowed to be vulnerable and speak about their problems, because it might seem to be that they're not coping, or it might seem to be that they are not as independent as they would like to be. And I think we do need to be very cautious of our teenagers. This cyberbullying and the suicide, the teen suicide that we're seeing is real, and it's very, very alarming for me to see. So I think we must never disregard our teenagers. If they are struggling with anything, they might not show that they are struggling in the most appropriate way, but the fact that they are externalizing and showing that there's something not quite right is a sign that we need to intervene and just talk to your kids, give them an opportunity to express what's going on, and welcome the tears and the tantrums and the door slamming and because again that's a way of release. It's a way of them getting rid of their feelings. Let them have that moment of tantrums and shouting and screaming, but then let them come back and talk about it when they're calmer. Again, Liza, I so wish schools would introduce yoga or Pilates. Life is busy. Kids' attention span shortened, influence of technology. Yeah, I think there are, it's people are becoming more aware of things like mindfulness, self-awareness, being able to be quiet, listen, living your life with gratitude, and all those things I think are becoming a lot more spoken about, which is lovely. I think if we do instill those values and qualities in our children, they'll be the better for it. So we said that anxiety is the most treatable, but it can have a devastating effect if it is not treated or diagnosed and treated. It is very persistent. Anxiety doesn't go away on its own. Very seldom does it. The title of my talk at the beginning was Friend or Foe, because you can live with anxiety, you definitely can, and it will be with you forever like an imaginary friend. But it can also dominate, it can also be very jealous, and it can certainly monopolize your decisions, your free time. It can be quite something that really takes away the joy and a lot of the pleasure in your life. So I think if there's one thing you take away from this talk this evening, is to be quiet and to listen, whether it's your own feelings that you need to identify and become aware of, or that of your children. There also needs to be a very close communication system between the school and the home, and also the people that are treating your child as well. So if your child is going to a psychiatrist and is on medication, the school must know, and moms, you need to also make sure that you let the psychiatrist know if things are not going well. That sort of communication between school, home, and doctor or practitioner or whoever it is, there needs to be a loop. There needs to be some kind of a communication channel going back and forth until the right mix of medication, treatment, therapy has been found. And the school, if they are aware of the trigger, they must also try and help to work around that. So if there is something that the child is extremely stressed about, it's about finding the happy medium between, yes, we know that anxiety and we all need to go through things, we all need to be doing things. We can't keep the child at home if there's a gala, or if there's a sports day, or if they've got to do an oral or write an exam. They can't miss school. They still need to do it, but they could be doing it under different circumstances or under different conditions, or they could have more support. Margaret, apologies for late logging. I'm still busy with the night routine for son with autumn. I'm glad you could join, Margaret. Please send a question if you've got a question. Thank you so much for joining us. Tanya, I teach mindfulness at a few schools. There are some schools embracing this. I'm so happy to hear that. Send me your details, Tanya, or where can schools get hold of you if they need to get you on board? Let us know. It would be great if you could present a session sharing skills that we can use to teach our children to be more mindful. Tanya, I think you and I need to talk. Maybe we can do a session together, just like this. Guys, final thoughts. And this is where I come in. This is the gold nugget that you've been hanging around for, and I'm so glad you have. My question is, how are you doing? Presumably there are mostly moms on here, or teachers, but I want to know, how are you doing? What's keeping you up at night? Is there anything that is worrying you that is really causing you to stress or causing you unnecessary worry? What is it? Do you know what it is? Is it one thing that you can identify and put your finger on? I want to empower parents to be able to advocate for their child, to know what to ask for and why you need to ask for it. You need to be the voice for your child, whether it's to help with a subject, whether it's to help with a teacher that they are not getting on with, whether it's help with an accommodation. What does your child need to be successful at school? What is that one thing? Can you put your finger on it? So I've asked you 2 questions. What is the one thing that is keeping you up at night, moms? And then what is the one thing that your child needs in order to be successful at school? Can you identify that one thing? So, if you feel like your child needs support, but you're not sure exactly what, if you're the case manager, trying to string everybody together, trying to connect the dots between the doctor, the psychiatrist, the school, the therapist, the teacher, you're going to become so overwhelmed. You are going to become so anxious yourself, trying to make sure that everybody's message gets across to everybody else. And then finally, if you need an ally or a loud voice to advocate for your child at school so that they can be successful, please contact me. I am that person. I've been there. I've been in the system. I've been a class teacher. I've been a mom. I've been a SENCO, a special needs coordinator. I know what it is to be a parent, and I know what it is to be that therapist or that person, that counselor, trying to bring out the best and trying to provide the most effective support for your child. So I don't expect you to be that person. I want to be that person. I want to be your ally. I want to be your voice. I want to be an advocate for your child, to make sure that they get the best support for whatever it is that they're dealing with at school. So what I want you to do is I want you to pop your email into the comments. I think there is a banner there that is going to stay on the screen. It's not a ticker. It's going to stay on the screen. I want you to put at the bottom, enter your email into the comments, and I will contact you. I will contact you and make an appointment, or we'll have a chat and see what is that one thing that was keeping you up at night. What was that one thing that your child needs in order to be successful at school? If you are not sure of those issues, let's have a chat. Let's identify that one thing. Or it could be 2 things, it could be 3 things, but we need to chat about it, and we need to make sure that you're getting the best support for your child so that they can thrive at school. Not survive, but thrive. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to just tackle the last few questions before we end off this evening. Bronwyn, thank you so much for joining. Kids need to know that mistakes are showing that they are trying, and adults can't let kids ever think that something is the end of the world. You know, how quickly do we say that, eh? It's just the end of the world. It's actually not just the end of the world. It's just that you left your lunchbox at home. Or it's just that you put the wrong, you wore the wrong shoes today, or whatever. It wasn't the end of the world. It was just that you forgot something, or you didn't write your homework down, or you left your diary at school, or whatever. It's okay. We all make mistakes. Tanya, thank you so much for tuning in. I see you in Cape Town, but that doesn't matter. We can do a stream like this. I'm going to contact you. Maybe we can do one together about mindfulness. Chantal, what would I do without you? The injustices, inequalities, and lack of resources keep me up at night. I want my child to be happy and confident in her abilities, and I want her to feel heard. Absolutely. I think we can all applaud that comment. Lauren, anxiety is such an important topic to discuss. I really do think that the fact that there were parents that contacted me about this issue means that this is not only a once-off presentation. Next Wednesday at 8 o'clock, I'm going to do a summary of this chat. It'll be a very quick 10-minute Q&A, and you can tune in, or please ask a friend to, if they missed it and you would like to encourage them to watch, please tell them to tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. same time, same place, and we will just do a quick summary and I can chat through any other questions that have come in between now and then. But like I said to you, put your email in the comments. I will contact you and we can have that chat. It won't cost you a cent, just some time. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and have a very great, blessed evening. Cheers now. Bye-bye.